Good morning. Thank you for joining us here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for Space Shuttle Endeavour's STS-134 pre-launch news conference. Joining us today is Mike Moses, the chair of the mission management team and the Space Shuttle Program Launch Integration Manager.
Good morning.
Mike Leinbach, Shuttle Launch Director.
Good morning.
And Kathy Winters, Shuttle Weather Officer.
Good morning.
We'll hear from our panelists and then we'll take questions. Mr. Moses.
Thanks, Kendra. Well, good morning, everybody. We had our mission management team meeting this morning, standard meeting on launch minus 2 days, just to review our status and see where we're at. Everything in great shape, very short meeting. Teams all pulled, ready to go and proceed with the countdown. And we are actually in countdown. Mike will give you a status of that here in just a second. We talked about the weather, talked a little bit about the systems, make sure all the elements are ready to support. Over on the space station side, the 42 Progress launch occurred this morning, right about the same time we were having our meeting. They're now successfully in orbit. Arrays are deployed, and checkouts are looking good, so they had a good post-insertion. So that mission's underway. That is kind of a soft constraint for us. We want to make sure they got launched and get docked okay in 2 days. They'll be docking about the same time we finish up tanking on Friday. And so if they run into some unexpected problem, we'll have to talk about that on launch day. So that was a good milestone for the station program and for our Russian colleagues to have that mission successfully in orbit. And other than that, we didn't talk much at all. A little bit about the potential visit from the president to make sure we understand the logistics and any impacts to our teams. We have folks both on the Air Force side and on our side working that pretty well and understand those impacts, and it should be fairly benign to us, other than the amount of entourage that comes with the president and aircraft arriving late to the launch center. But I think we have good plans to handle that. We talked just a little bit with our propulsion elements, to kind of go through some history. For the external tank, this is ET-122, which was actually, we're kind of flying it out of order. It was manufactured a long time ago, back before the Columbia accident. It went through Hurricane Katrina, got some damage, had to be fixed, got the modifications that we put on all the tanks for return to flight, and has come through in flying colors. But if you take a look at it out the pad, it looks a little more suntanned than other tanks, because the UV makes that orange foam insulation turn a little darker. So it's a darker tank, and it's got some repair spots on it, but it is in more than good shape to fly, and we're more than ready to fly ET-122. In our solid rocket boosters, a good testament to the reusability of the program. We're flying elements on this stack as well as on the next stack that flew on STS-1. So some of these components are from original build hardware that we reused the solid rocket boosters. So that's really a good testament to that team and the work they do to turn those pieces of hardware around and refly them. The main engines are as usual in fantastic shape and ready to go. Those things have been performing as the workhorses they truly are, and fully expect everything to be on Friday ready to go again. And the orbiter itself, Endeavour's in great shape. I would say we're probably not working any issues at all. There's a couple things that are keeping the team working, but they're in the minor category. Nothing really that needs to be elevated to the management level. So with that, we had an easy poll to say we're ready to go. We're looking forward to Friday's launch.
Okay, well, thanks. Well, the countdown for Endeavour's final mission is going extremely well. The launch pad right now is cleared in preparation for loading the cryogenic fuels for the fuel cell system. That'll begin at about 11:30 today. And we'll get back into the pad shortly after dinner time tonight and continue preparations for Friday's launch. Again, we're not working any significant issues at all. The team is upbeat. Talked to the firing room this morning, and they're all excited about the mission, about the countdown, the mission, and the president showing up, and so we're dealing with that. That's a little bit of a challenge for us, but the team is not distracted by that. We have a few people working those details, as Mike said. So no big deal from the team's perspective relative to the president's visit. We're in great shape. We're ready to go, and right now we're looking forward to an on-time launch Friday afternoon. Thanks.
Okay, and the weather is looking good for launch. We're expecting some weather before launch. Today we expect some afternoon thunderstorms, and also tomorrow a front is going to be moving into the area, and that's going to give us some weather tomorrow, late afternoon and into the evening hours. By launch day, the front's going to move through, and the weather is looking very favorable for launch. I'm going to go ahead and I'd like to show a satellite picture if I can. You can see that there's a front that is moving into the southeastern U.S. that's going to be moving into Florida tomorrow, and that's what's going to give us some concern for weather as we get into RSS retract operations tomorrow evening. But that weather will continue to move on. It's not going to linger in the area. We're just going to get some thunderstorms late in the afternoon and into the evening hours. And some of the storms could be strong, but after they move through, we'll just have cloudy conditions by launch morning, and by the afternoon the weather's going to be looking pretty nice. So for now, right now, we're looking at the only concern being a crosswind as winds shift around to the northeast, and with that we have a 20% chance of KSC weather prohibiting launch. The towsite weather is looking good at Istris. There is a chance for showers at both Zaragoza and Marone, but Istris is looking good. If we happen to delay 24 hours, we actually have more of a crosswind concern. A high pressure area starts to build into our north, and the winds shift around more easterly. So with that, we have a 30% chance of KSC weather prohibiting launch if we happen to delay 24 hours. Again, Istris on day 2 is still looking good, although there is a front that's moving through both Zaragoza and Marone that's going to cause some showers in those areas again. And then finally, if we happen to delay to Sunday, the weather here actually improves a bit more when it comes to the winds. They shift around more to the southeast, and that's more up the runway. And so with that, back down to a 20% chance of KSC weather prohibiting launch. And the tail sites look a little bit better on day 3, although there's still a chance for showers in the area of Zaragoza and Marone. But again, Istris is still a good tail site with a go forecast. So overall, there's a 20% chance of KSC weather prohibiting launch on launch day, and the only concern really is a crosswind.
Thank you. We'll now take questions. When the microphone comes your way, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. We can start over here with Mark.
Hi, Mark Kirkman, Interspace News. A couple questions. You might have said it, Kathy, but tomorrow evening for RSS rollback, is weather going to be a player?
Yes, we are expecting thunderstorms in the area. There's a front that's going to be moving through Florida tomorrow, and as it approaches our area, we're expecting to not only have the front in the area, but we have this warm, moist atmosphere ahead of the front. And then we also expect to get a late afternoon sea breeze with some added convergence in the area. We do expect to see thunderstorm activity. So we do have to have a 20% chance or less of lightning within 5 nautical miles to rotate the RSS back. So what we'll do is we'll just watch it real time, and when we can get clear of the weather, then we'll we'll give the forecast when we can.
All right, and then I guess for either mics, I'm not sure who can take which question. If weather is a player for for RSS rollback, is a constraint to coming out? What's your main? How long can you delay it before you have some constraint against that? And then I hope you don't think this is a goofy question, but for Air Force One, so as not to foul up the RTLS runway, does he have to go down to the skid strip, or will it be landing at the SLF?
Relative to the RSS retract, we have a good 4 or 5 hours to play with tomorrow evening before we start getting into a time crunch after RSS retract. So really no big issue there. I think Kathy's weather will clear more quickly than that. So the team will work with that, and we've delayed RSS 4.5 hours, I believe, in the past, and made tanking on time. So that really shouldn't be a problem for us. And relative to the president, there are a lot of things you learn when you deal with presidential visit. One is you're never quite sure what the final plan is until it's done. So we're not quite sure what all the final plans are, the times of that type of thing, and we've deconflicted different options depending where he goes, and so we have good plans in place both ways, and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, the wrap-up summary, though, Marty, is basically the teams are talking this, so we will not impact launch operations. Right. So both in terms of RTLS and any of the activities we need out on the range side or anything like that. So we don't know what the final plans exactly are, but they're going to deconflict themselves from our operations.
James Dean with Florida Today. Mike Moses, can you speak a little bit to the ups and downs that AMS has gone through over the years, and how has it gone from a payload that didn't have a flight a couple of years ago to one with such high expectations now?
Yeah, no, I talked to that team a while back last week when they were out in the payload bay doing some checks, and they're excited to be finally ready to go in orbit. We flew them as a payload in the payload bay a while back, but it's been about 17 years, I think, that these teams have kind of been together working on that payload. So they're very excited to get going. We talked about it with the Hubble team too. I don't think anybody in that payload community ever really thought they were dead. These guys like to use the Monty Python skit that they weren't quite ready to go in the wagon and be hauled out of town. And so they hung on and did make it back, and we do have them manifested. So they're excited to fly. We talk a lot about the science that they're planning to do. To me personally, one of the things that they mentioned to us at a briefing a couple months ago was, if you think about what we do with all the super collider work that we're doing in hydrogen physics, which kind of I had a little background in that in college doing physics. it's what you don't expect to learn that usually surprises you. So the fact that that instrument's going to be able to stay up there and have an operational life of many years, I think they're going to learn a lot that they plan to, but it's the chance that they're going to find something they never even expected that has them the most excited about finally getting on orbit and getting the business on station.
But just recapping the history there, I mean, it did require an addition of a couple of missions to your manifest to, or wouldn't have ever made it on the shuttle. Is that right?
Yeah, it's hard to say looking back in hindsight. Did we specifically add a special mission just for AMS, or did we accommodate the payloads around it? When you look at the purpose of making sure station was outfitted properly, back now 7-8 years ago when we decided the number of flights, yeah, we had to add one more to put AMS, but it's not to say that by the time we got closer we wouldn't have needed to add more anyway for logistics supply. So it's hard to say. I'd hate to make it sound like, yeah, we definitely had to bring them back from death and add a new flight just for them. That's what happened historically, but looking back on it, it's kind of hard to tell that we did it exactly for that reason. So.
Jay Barbary with NBC. If the president, if they wanted to bring Air Force One in during the countdown, landed on the shuttle landing strip, I assume you can take it out of the way so that it'll be parked clear of any RTLS, if that would be necessary, and that he can take off, after the launch, after the RTLS is cleared. And also, if during the year, the first year, 6 months following the Atlantis' flight, these last 2 flights, is there any way, if the need arose, that you guys could put together another shuttle flight? Do you have another tank? Is there any way, once it's done, you're going to start? Is that going to be final? Okay.
Let's see. Relative to the president's visit again, we've deconflicted both options. So the RTLS is not an option, not an issue for us. We've told them we prefer that Air Force One is not on the SLF. But again, the final decision comes from them. And we've worked very, very hard to make sure that we can execute our full mission completely as safely as we always do. So not a problem, Jay.
Yeah, they've been very understanding that this is an operational visit and that they don't want to impact the operation that they're coming to visit in the first place. On your second question, Jay, yeah, we don't have any more hardware. The Atlantis flight will be the last that we have in the shuttle program. Yeah. Yep.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, if both mics could answer. There's another important guest coming, Congresswoman Giffords. What's your thoughts on that? Are you pleased she's making it? And is your launch team at risk of being distracted by all that surrounds that as well?
No, again, she's coming. We treat that just like a crew family visit with the rest of the crew families. She needs a little extra care and attention. And then there's going to be a lot of extra outside attention placed on it. But from what we're doing, she's NASA family, and we're treating her just like we do all the rest of the crew families. From the impact of the launch team, if you'd actually talk to the launch team in the firing room, I don't know how many of them, other than the fact that they know the families are around, we don't ever see them. We're on our consoles and doing our jobs. We're not wandering around the halls of the building, seeing people wandering through the building. So from that standpoint, it's not going to be a distraction to us. The only real impact is going to be the extra traffic coming in and out of work, and so that's not a big deal. So we're obviously very pleased she's coming to lunch and supporting Mark and his flight, just like we're pleased that every member of the family gets to come down here and witness the majesty, for lack of a better word, of the liftoff of the shuttle. It's a pretty impressive thing to see.
Irene.
Irene Klotz with Reuters. I have 2 questions. First, concerning the Obama's visit, is there any chance that the president and his family will actually be in the Launch Control Center for launch? Well, again, we're taking all options under consideration and deconflicting every one of them, and different locations at the Kennedy Space Center are up for grabs, and we've worked every one of them. So, again, until the plan is final, we don't even know where he's going to be exactly. In my chair? Yeah, not in your chair. No. I can tell you where he won't be. I want to narrow that down. I don't want to do his job, and I'm sure he wouldn't want to do mine. And also for you, Mike, over the past few months, we've all talked a lot about the just what it's like to kind of experience this end of this 30-year program. And I know there's been a kind of wide range of emotions. Well, in the past 2 months since the last shuttle launch, the shuttles have now been named, where they're going to end up is on display, and the last layoff notices are out. And just was wondering if you can maybe just give us a little sense of where you and your friends and your colleagues out here are in terms of accepting and moving on to what looks like still a kind of uncertain future.
Well, see, just one quick correction. The final layoff notices are not out yet. They don't go out this early. But, in talking to the various guys that I've worked with for many, many years, they're all getting their plans together. I play golf with a lot of them, and we always talk over a round of golf what their future plans are. And it seems like everybody's first of all, we're accepting of the fact. We've said that before, and people are starting to get their acts together where they're going to go after the shuttle program. On the contractor side, if you're in one of the key positions, there's quite a nice severance package, and so it gives people a fair amount of time to make up their minds where they would end up after the shuttle program. That's very good. On the civil service side, we've been told that we will all still have jobs at the Kennedy Space Center. We're in the process of reorganizing the Space Center to a certain extent to deal with future customers and the desire for future customers. So we'll all end up having good jobs at the Kennedy Space Center, and the end of the program itself, they're coming one at a time. Discovery is now being taken apart and being saved for final display, and that'll start on Endeavour when she gets home. So it's kind of sad to see it end, of course. But again, we're dealing with it, and I just hope the next program comes more quickly than a lot of people are expecting.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. I have two questions. First, have any modifications been made to the Endeavour orbiter since its last mission?
Let's see. We've added the boundary layer DTOs, a test objective. Discovery had the same thing, and we added it to Endeavour. It's a little bump tile, we call it, basically an intentional protrusion that sticks out into the airstream we put down on the bottom of the starboard wing. And this one's a ½ inch high, just like we flew on Discovery, with the intention to, as we're re-entering it at high Mach numbers, to trip that boundary layer up at about Mach 18 or so to an asymmetric flow condition, which has a little higher heating with the turbulent flow behind it, just to try to characterize how that flies in that regime. The shuttle's pretty much the only vehicle flying at that speed. We've had really great success with that for, I think, now 4 flights in a row on Discovery. But more data is better, so we would have only had 1 flight with this big bump at a ½ inch from Discovery, so we decided if we could add it to Endeavour quickly, that would double our data set. We've also had some problems with some of the thermocouples dropping out through the plasma on reentry, so we've modified a few of those thermocouples on this one. So that's really the only modification that we made per se to Endeavour. Some of the crew kit and the manifest stuff, that normal things that we change out, have been changed, but nothing in the major vehicle configuration changes to Endeavour.
And second question, do you have any idea where Congressman Giffords is going to be watching the flight from?
Let's see, I say kind of similar. It's going to sound like we're talking about the president's visit. She goes with the crew families, and that location, there's several options that they could go, and I don't know exactly what their final pick was, but there's a couple of different viewing locations that the families typically go to. She'd be with them. If it has, I'm not privy to those details.
All right, thank you.
Bill.
Bill Harwood, CBS, with 2 quick ones, if I could. Has Discovery gotten to the point of no return yet, Mike? I mean, have you done invasive enough stuff that you couldn't put it back together? Just to know where that line in the sand is.
I wouldn't say it's to the point of no return yet. We haven't cut a wing off or anything like that, but we are taking it apart. We've taken off all 3 of the orbital maneuvering system pods, the two aft and the forward, and we're sending them down to the hypergol maintenance facility to be completely clean. Things like that. So
I wouldn't flow liners, Elevon actuators that Shannon talks about pulling out of the vehicle, that would be the end when you do that. I'm just trying to understand when that happens.
The flow is basically we're about to finish up down mission processing, and they need to come back. They're going to actually once we get this vehicle launched, they're ready to come tell the program officially that down mission processing is now finished, and they're ready to move into the transition and retirement phase, which will start those activities. So we haven't yet started, but we are more than ready to, and we will get that started probably in a week or two.
And one more for Mike Leinbach. You know, Mike, you've said that, you know, you're so focused on getting these things off the ground in each flow that you really haven't reflected on the end of the program the way you probably will on the last flow, obviously. But when you drive out here, you know, and you see things, does it occur? I mean, I know you must be trying to record this in your mind because it really is the end of an era for the shuttle, and for a lot of you guys that have been doing this for so long. I'm just curious when you have a moment to reflect, what goes through your mind? I mean, stuff goes through my mind for sure, but I'm just wondering about yours.
Yeah, I think it goes through everybody's mind in this room who's covered this program for some time. I went out to the launch pad a couple of weeks ago and saw Endeavour for the last time in the vertical. And, you know, there were some times where I was standing on the deck of the launcher looking up at her and just thinking, this is the last time I'm going to see that vehicle at this launch pad ever. And that begins to sink home. The other thing that sinks home is, and I've talked about it a little bit before, Bill, is the workforce and the effects to the workforce, the effects on the workforce from the end of the program, principally on the contractor side. A lot of my close friends are United Space Alliance employees, and they all work, and a lot of them work in the Launch Control Center with me. And I walk up and down the halls and say hello to them every day, and we have lunch together, and we play golf, as I said. And by and large, most of them are going to be gone in another 3 or 4 months this summer, sometime this summer, whenever that final layoff really hits. And so I see the Launch Control Center, which has been such a beehive of activity since it was built back in the Apollo days, actually, that's going to be, I won't say empty, but it's going to be a heck of a lot more empty than it is today, and it'll be a lot less fun to be working in because there won't just be that excitement of working on the shuttle program anymore. We will be looking forward to the next program. The Launch Control Center hopefully will be used in the future and not too far from now. But it's a stark reality when you realize that your friends that you've worked with are moving on. They're all getting good jobs, that type of thing. But still, it's like breaking up a family. It's tough to deal with. But we're moving on, and we're going to fly these last 2 missions safely and bring the crews home, and then that'll be it.
Clara?
Hi, Clara Moskowitz with Space.com, and this is a question for both Mr. Leinbach and Mr. Moses. It sounds like there's going to be really unusually huge crowd levels coming out to see this launch on Friday, and I wonder just what it means to both of you that so many people are going to come see Endeavour's last launch.
Well, I think from a human perspective, trying to get home after launch or scrub, it's going to be tough. What local law enforcement has told us is that whatever drive delay we experience for the 133 launch, it's going to be about 50% longer this time going home, and so it's going to be. And we're telling people to bring a little cooler with them, right, and put some snacks and a Coke in there or something. But it's going to be tough to get home. But when you think about why the people are coming to experience something that's uniquely American and be able to see one of the last 2 flights, that gives me a lot of pride.
Yeah, I don't have much to add other than what Mike said. He said it perfectly. But that's what I feel is when I see all these people, and even when I'm stuck in traffic, it doesn't bug me because they're here to watch us do something pretty cool, and it's a real honor to be able to launch the shuttle, and I'm really glad everybody does get to come down here to take a look.
Mark Ratterman with Talking Space. I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but regarding range safety, how do you feel? What's your confidence level in good operation of the range safety process for this launch?
I think you'll hear both Mike and I say the same thing. We have 100% confidence in that team. They did everything right last time. They're going to do it all this time. We had good debriefs on both sides of the house, the Air Force and NASA side. We improved some communication lines just to make sure we really are staying in sync and lashed up, and no issues at all on the range safety side.
Hi, Ken Kramer from Spaceflight Magazine. One question for each of the Mikes. Mike Leinbach, can you tell us some special memory you have of all the orbiters? Tell us something special about Endeavour. And for Mike Moses, you mentioned SRBs from STS-1. I wonder if that's by design, or did you plan to have SRBs from STS-1 on this mission? Thank you.
Well, let's see. Maybe one of the highlights of Endeavour for me was the first flow, when she first arrived, and to see a brand new orbiter orbiter processing facility in the VAB out at the launch pad. Just a beautiful, beautiful machine. And then I had the privilege of being the NASA test director for that flow, and that was the last time we did a flight readiness firing, and preparing for that test and seeing the main engines light and then shut down 20 seconds later intentionally. That was a big, big test. It proved the system's ready to fly, and then we launched, I don't know, about 3 or 4 weeks later, something like that, as I recall. I think the first flow will be remembered quite a bit, and then the last time I went out to the pad 2 weeks ago.
And on the SRB hardware, I actually don't know the specifics of the plan. There are people in the solid rocket booster project who manage those logistics, and I can't say whether they planned it this way or not. But we have a lot of hardware, both in terms of forward skirts, aft skirts, and casings, and they get reused on a plan. And there was probably some technical driver to why we did it. Usually we go more on logic than emotion around here. So I'm sure there was some reason why we picked that set of hardware, and it was the ready to go hardware. But I can't tell you specifically.
Okay, in the back here, please.
Gene McCullough with Talking Space for either Mike Leinbach or Mike Moses. Are there any plans to put that protruding tile that we spoke about earlier on Atlantis?
No, so Atlantis is staying the way it is. We didn't need to modify that vehicle. We'll have enough data from these two, so we did not modify Atlantis.
In the back, please. Todd.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Mike Leinbach. I was just wondering what your thoughts are about getting Atlantis to roost here in retirement. And for Mike Moses, I was wondering what your thoughts are about Johnson Space Center not getting one of the orbiters.
Well, you go first.
Well, let's see. I'm the happy one. Let's see. I told you before I had the privilege of seeing the plans for the display of an orbiter over at our visitor center, and it is just a fabulous design. It'll take several years to complete, but once it's complete and you're going to be able to see Atlantis up close and personal, that'll be like having her back again to a certain extent. So, extremely happy that Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center gets one of the orbiters.
And let's see, for me, I'm while still badged at Johnson Space Center, I've been living here for the last 3 years, so I'm also very pleased that Kennedy gets to keep an orbiter. As a Houston resident, former Houston resident, I wish one would be going there too. But I'll say something here that does not mean I'm trying to run for politics after this. But to be fair, right, the nation, the people who work on the space program know and love these orbiters, both here and in Huntsville and in Houston, out in California at the Palmdale plant and Boeing and the old Rockwell folks. I could go to Stennis Space Center. We're distributed around the country. Those folks really do know and love the shuttle. The chance to send this same thing somewhere else in the country to try to garner the same enthusiasm, to me, is actually a very noble purpose and a really good idea. So I'm personally pleased to see them going around the country. We could have probably had 15 orbiters, which would have been really cool to have been flying them. But I don't think our budget gets set by where they need to go to the museums afterwards. So, I wish we could do more. Well, obviously, you always wish you could do more. But I know as a kid growing up, being able to visit certain areas, are you a tourist going to a space destination? Then yeah, you're probably going to visit Houston. But are you just a tourist in America, then going to California or New York? You're definitely going to get to see some space hardware. I know I've been on the Intrepid a whole lot, growing up with my grandparents living in New York City, and it helped inspire me. And so, personally, everybody's going to be disappointed, everybody's going to be excited, and you're never going to please anybody. So it's a decent mix, and if I was picking, I'd probably pick a little different, but thank God I'm not picking, and we'll be fine with what we got. So.
A question for either Mike, but you're talking about how the drive time home is going to be long. What's the latest thinking on scrub turnaround if you get down close and don't make it, and the ability of the team to get back for a 24-hour recycle?
Yeah, so what Mike and I agreed to is that the conditions of the day will dictate what the 24 or 48-hour scrub turnaround posture is. All things being equal, if we scrub late for unexpected weather, Kathy, or some technical issue that comes up late that could be solved in a 24 or 48. We just need to talk on launch day what the best plan for the orbiter is, what the best plan for the weather is, and the best plan for the team, and we'll weigh those three components and then pick. I can tell you driving home is going to be a challenge, and that's going to factor into our decision this time more so than ever in the past.
Associated Press. Two quick questions. Do you have what's the latest law enforcement crowd count expected in Brevard County? And if there is a scrub, has NASA been informed whether the president would come back for another try?
The estimate from STS-133's launch was 400,000 in the surrounding communities. That doesn't include the people out here. And the best estimate right now is somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000. And our numbers on base out here only went up 1,500 or so. So it's not the people out here that we're worried about. It's the clog of the roads, Titusville, Cocoa Beach, that type. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Haven't even asked that question, frankly.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah.
James.
James Dean with Florida Today. Mike Leinbach, as we're kind of trying to differentiate between these vehicles as they're coming up to final flights, do you characterize Endeavour in any way, apart from the other orbiters, the fact that it's the youngest or any other aspects of how it's flown and processed?
Well, the orbiters themselves are pretty much alike. As you know, there are some idiosyncrasies that are different, but the thing that sets them apart are the different processing teams and the leadership of those teams. And I can tell you the Endeavour team has a very dynamic leadership team in place, and it's fun to go over their scheduling meetings and play with them a little bit. So it's the team's difference in style, I think, is the main difference.
Okay, second row, please.
Steve Kessinger with Maplegate Media for the mics. With the final flight of STS-135, is it possible that all three orbiters will be brought out for a photo opportunity, or is that just not going to be logistically possible?
We don't have any plans to do that. Our transition retirement budget, folks, there's a lot of things we'd love to do. People asking us to fly them around the country, take tours, and all that stuff, and we'd love to do it, but we have no money for it. And we're given a budget to fly the shuttle, and we're using that money to finish flying the shuttle. And we have a very, very, very small budget to then decommission and safe them for display. So, they're not going to have any OMS pods or forward RCS modules. They wouldn't look too pretty in a shot anyway. But no, we don't have any plans to set up a photo op.
Ken had a follow-up over here. Okay, in the back, please.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today again. Is there any truth to the rumor that you plan to launch Atlantis on the 4th of July? And also I was wondering if there is any possibility that you would target a last landing at Edwards Air Force Base so that you could tour the orbiter on the way back home?
So, no, I don't know. There's 1,000 rumors about the launch date of Atlantis, so I don't know which ones are true. We are currently planning for the 28th of June, and that is still the plan. We know we're a little tight on the processing schedules in terms of the contingency days we have. Because of the workforce reductions we've taken, we've limited the amount of crews we have, and basically, as one example, in the payloads world, we're down to one single team that installs the payload into the payload bay. And so if they ran long, they'd have to go home at the end of their workday and then come in the next day, as opposed to having a second shift team that could keep up the operations. So because of that, we like to have a contingency day or two after we've put the payload in the bay, just in case. And again, I'm not picking on the payload, just saying that's one example. So we don't quite have enough contingency days for me to be 100% comfortable. So the team, the Atlantis team, has been working some options. We've been redoing the schedule, so the 6/28 schedule looks supportable. The crew training has also been a little bit of an issue. They've had some extra Russian training that they've had to take, and we're working in the schedule to see what we have to keep, what we can do in parallel. Once we get this mission launched, because truly one of the big drivers to that schedule is this one, then we're going to sit down and look at where we currently stand and decide if the 28th is good. Maybe we need a day or two. Maybe we need a little more than that. So no, there's no official target to move us to 4th of July or any other date in July. We're still trying to do our best to keep 6/28. But just like we do with every mission, once we get it in the prime ready to go slot, we'll take a look at what it really needs to do. As far as targeting the landing at Edwards, it's one of those things we've been asked to do a lot, but the same reasons why we don't do it with any of the other orbiters is why we're not doing it with this one. Is it's full of hazardous commodities. We don't want to tour it across the country with all the engines loaded up, the hypergalls in it, all the pressurized systems. That's just not a safe thing to do. So, like I said, the headquarters is working a plan. When we ferry the orbiters for final display, maybe that would be the time to do a little bit of a PR tour with them. But while they're still in an operational state, we're not going to do that.
Okay, we had another follow-up in the back.
Gene McCulka with Talking Space again for either Mike Moses or Mike Leinbach. This is a question with reference to the final disposition of the orbiters. New York is getting Enterprise, and folks over in the New York area, or at least some anyhow, are characterizing Enterprise as a, quote, fake orbiter or a hand-me-down or something like that. What would you go ahead and say to folks like that?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say is I certainly don't take one or two people writing an opinion in the newspaper as a representative of the entire region, so I'm not going to put much weight in any of those comments. Not slamming you guys in your jobs, but you know, it's the media and what chooses to become news, and so you know, Enterprise was a landmark vehicle, a test bed for us. Did all the approach and land tests. It is not a space orbiter, and it was never designed to be, but it certainly did exactly what it was intended to be. I've actually visited it up at the Air and Space Museum in D.C., and it's a pretty cool ship to see. As somebody who works with the space orbiters, you do look right away and go, God, that doesn't look the same. And it doesn't. It was built a long time ago, and we've changed the design a little bit. But it is every bit as important to this shuttle program as Atlantis, Discovery, and Endeavour are.
Robert.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com for Mike Moses. I think in the run-up to the last mission, you said that you hadn't had a chance to talk to the museums because they hadn't been selected yet, and now they've been selected, and I think museum representatives came here earlier this month. Can you describe how that meeting went, and if there were any particular requests on the behalf of the eventual shuttle recipients on what they wanted with their orbiters?
Yes, so Robert, they were here, I think it's now been 2 weeks, maybe it was a week ago, I can't quite remember. We basically showed them, we took them on a tour, got to see what we have, talked about what our plans are, defined again specifically what the end state that we plan on leaving the orbiter in, and then we need their requirements to what display state they would like the orbiter to be in. They kind of showed us some preliminary ideas with what they're thinking for display ideas. We got a handle on transportation impacts, both in terms of air transport to their site and then local ground transport or sea transport from that landing site down to their final display site. If I had to sum it up in one word, it was a little bit of it was definitely a learning experience to see just exactly the magnitude of what they're actually getting now and what it takes to handle one of those things. An example being a lot of the display ideas show the orbiter kind of suspended or up at an angle, and the recognition that the payload bay doors can't hold their own weight open, and so you're going to need handling equipment to hold the doors open. The RMS, the robot arm, if it's out and displayed, it also can't hold its own weight and needs to be somehow modified. So there's a lot of work that will have to be done to aesthetically make it look the way they want to, work that we are not planning on doing as part of the end state safing requirements. So a lot of learning going on both sides, and it was a very good kickoff meeting, but we still have a lot of work to do. The plan is in the next month or two to have that finalized to the point where we now know what to go start. Discovery is one of the easier ones. The Air and Space Museum has a pretty good idea how they want to display Discovery, and so what we do to that vehicle is pretty well worked out. The transportation plan is already pretty well worked out as well. It really helps that they sit on the end of a very long runway, and so we don't have to do too much there other than get some cranes to work. And on that note, you know, one of the things we're doing on our side, the last time we used cranes to move an orbiter off the back of the 747 was about 25 years ago. And so we've brought those procedures back out. We've got that hardware back out of storage. We're actually going to set it up next month out at the SLF. And we're not going to bring an SCA in or lift an action orbiter, but we're going to put the sling together, and we're going to use smaller cranes than what we normally use. There's only a couple of the big cranes we need in the country. We don't want to tie those up. But we're going to basically go dry run that to make sure we understand 2 or 3 years from now how we need to go execute those crane lifts to be able to get the orbiters to the display site. So it was basically the linchpin that kind of kick-started the engine and let us now start actually working what we're good at, which is building plans and executing them, as opposed to this kind of hypothetical one, which we couldn't really do until we named sites, and so now that team's off and running.
Jay Barbary with NBC for Mike Leinbach. Mike, I don't really think I have to ask you this question, but the president's going to be here. will you even consider pushing the envelope or taking any chance that you normally wouldn't take just to get Endeavour off the pad while the president's here?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, sir.
Ken, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Ken Kramer for Spaceflight Magazine. For either Mike, just wondering if you know the status of this USA proposal to fly one or two of the orbiters, 1 or 2 missions a year, if that's still alive or is that dead? Because I'm wondering about the decommissioning of the next 2 orbiters. Is there any chance you might delay that to consider this USA proposal, or are you going to fully decommission the orbiters? Thanks.
So let's see, I've said it a couple times that that proposal is being run by the United Space Alliance and a contractor consortium, and NASA has nothing to do with it. So whether they're going to continue that proposal or not, I do not know. You'd have to ask them. They understand the timelines and the schedules that we're on, and their proposals would take those into consideration. So again, this is not a NASA study to do this. This is a contractor proposal, just like we've asked for. It's in response to a NASA request for commercial crew options and ways to fly. You just saw we awarded our CCDev 2 contracts to 4 companies. There's a CCDev 3 that's going to come out in a little bit. So if they want to compete in that world, they can. They understand the timelines and the restrictions, but NASA's not involved in any of that.
Okay, we have time for one last follow-up with Jim.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. Are there any particular commemorative payloads or other materials that have been put on this flight since it's its last flight?
Let's see. I know on Discovery we flew a mission kit of some end of program patches to be able to give to all the employees at the end. I think we're flying a couple. We're not nearly as many as we flew on Discovery. I think Endeavour's carrying a few as well. But other than that, nothing that's a particular dedicated commemorative event. We fly an official mission kit all the time. So there's flags and patches and other things. Probably a couple extra to commemorate end of program stuff, but nothing that I can recall off the top of my head that's a dedicated commemorative thing.
That will conclude today's pre-launch news conference for the STS-134 mission. Please join us tomorrow on NASA television at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for the L-1 countdown status briefing. For more information on the STS-134 crew and mission, visit www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thank you.